Welcome to the Full Monty and a Cup of Joe podcast. We took a week off last week as Monty is dealing with Hurricane Helene, running currently off of a couple generators at his house and won't have power for, you said, 3 to 4 more weeks. Monty, how's it going down in South Carolina?
The Hey Joe, the majority of South Carolina is okay. Western South Carolina um, is particularly the hardest hit area of South Carolina, and not near as bad as the mountains of North Carolina. They're just completely ruined. But we caught it pretty bad here. We've been without power. Well, 4 o'clock tomorrow morning will officially make a week. That's when we lost power. It was 4 a.m. Friday morning.
Oh,
So
geez.
we've been without it since then. We got in touch with our electric company today, and they actually texted Rachel in the middle of the night and said that our estimated date of power returning was 3 to 4 weeks. And so we woke up this morning and we're like, well, surely that's a misprint or an error. It's like got to be 3 or 4 days or 3 or 4 hours.
Right.
And so I called the people on the phone, and they were obviously slammed, but friendly and talking to me. And the substation that serves this little area where I'm at, it's us and three other houses. It's four residences that are without this power right here in this area because our substation has been completely destroyed, and they have to have an entire new substation put in. The problem with that is they have to replace at least 100 telephone poles to get power to that substation. So I was talking to the lady on the phone today, and she said, I hate to discourage you, but 3 or 4 weeks is optimistic at this point. The substation's destroyed. And she said, even if we had a brand new substation sitting here ready to go, and we had 100 power poles sitting here ready to go, it would still take about a week to do all the work that needs to be done to keep you turned back on. And she said, but such as it is, we don't even have half of what we need to get started putting in the new substation, and we don't have any power poles at all. So all of the power companies around South Carolina, there's several, and these power companies, they sell power to each other. They all work together and whatnot. But they've ran out for the largest part. They've ran out of power poles, so there's no more of those left. Um, they're running out of equipment left and right to do repairs, and uh, those people in Western North Carolina, they haven't even really gotten in a lot of those areas yet to assess what the real damage is. Just to give you an idea of how bad things are here locally in this area, we're 33 miles from Augusta, Georgia, the state line. Uh, and I have a very good friend of mine that I've known for many, many years who is a Department of the Army civilian employee. And he works out of Fort Jackson. They have all been ordered to participate now in mandatory overtime, and they're sending all these guys. He's in law enforcement, but as a civilian, so he's not in the military anymore. But anyway, they're sending all these law enforcement guys to Fort Eisenhower in Augusta, which is formerly Fort Gordon. Now we've had the name change; it's Fort Eisenhower, but they've deemed the fort no longer inhabitable. The housing is destroyed on that base. They are removing all the personnel from that base and sending them to other bases. Just to give you another idea, all the commissaries at any military base in South Carolina, they're all empty. People have been coming in from other places that are harder hit than us, and so it's been a real beast of a situation. Um, I went through Hugo, and for my part, where I am, and in my experience, this is worse for me than Hugo was. Now, somebody who lives down closer to the coast of South Carolina would probably disagree because they really caught a bad bashing from Hugo on the coast. But this really necessarily wasn't a coastal thing. This thing, we thought was going to kind of do this left turn, and kind of go out over Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi and kind of fall apart. And it just wound up not doing it. And so it just ripped up through a part of the country that's not generally used to dealing with this kind of weather up in those mountainous areas, especially in North Carolina. And it came
Mhm.
so fast. Uh, Me and my wife Rachel, we woke up in the middle of the night, Joe, and I thought it was an earthquake because our entire house was shaking. That the entire we could
Mm.
feel the entire house shaking. There are houses around here that are destroyed, that are just gone. If you drive through I-20 coming from Georgia into South Carolina, you can just see mile after mile after mile of the interstate. There's just pine trees laid over one after another, just like rows of toothpicks. Um,
And
it's
it's just the
it's
winds were that strong that they
just
were.
that just out of nowhere that strong. And I've been through several hurricanes, and a hurricane is usually something that progresses. It clouds up, it starts to rain, you get a little bit of wind, and then gradually over hours and hours, you get more and more rain, more and more wind, and then you get on the other side of the storm. But this thing, I mean, it's like this thing just came so fast, and so hard. It was just nobody, you know, nobody was really expecting it, and we looked at it on the maps, of course, and we knew there was a storm in the Gulf, and okay, this storm's probably going to affect us, but we were all thinking just from kind of what we had heard that this might be a nasty tropical storm, which would be less than a Category 1 hurricane. So I
Mhm.
think that what the majority of people were expecting was a little bit of wind, a substantial amount of rain, maybe a couple of tree branches here and there, the typical tropical storm in South Carolina, and then it would just move on about its business. And it just wound up not being that at all. And it's an extremely unfortunate situation. We are going to be without power here for at least the foreseeable future, the next 3 weeks. And Joe, we're one of the lucky ones. We're lucky. Uh, we've been in our house every
Yeah.
night. We've got food, and there's a lot of people in Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina. If anybody has the means, if you can just chip in whatever funds they may need. There's people that are sending them water, sending them any number of things. But those mountains of North Carolina, that area around Asheville, Greenville, South Carolina, all the way out to Chattanooga, Tennessee, Knoxville, Tennessee, the Smokies, all that stuff has really taken a massive blast.
Yep.
It's no exaggeration when I say this. There's a popular tourist area called Chimney Rock, which is up there in the mountains of North Carolina. It's gone. It doesn't exist. It is no longer there. There are whole entire towns, Banner Elk, North Carolina, which is right near Appalachian State. There's a university there called Lees McRae College. Everything's gone. It's gone. It's just not there. There are
Mm.
sections of I-40 and I-26 going through those mountains and going out to Chattanooga and going to Knoxville and going to Asheville and Virginia that lead to all these other places. And there are sections of those interstates that are gone, completely gone. There's some of these houses in those areas were 20 feet underwater. That's how much
Mm.
rain was coming down those mountains, and just started overflowing the smaller ponds and tributaries. And it's it's a cataclysmic situation, and we're lucky, we're fortunate, we're okay. Nobody that we know immediately has been injured or suffered any major property damage. I got a little bit of roof damage on a shed, and I had a bunch of down limbs. We got a couple of trees that are down. That's nothing, we can deal with that in time. But
Mhm.
the people in the upstate of South Carolina and those mountainous regions, they really need some thoughts, prayers, and they're going to need a lot of money. It's
Yeah.
bad. So
Yeah. I mean, I've seen all the news. It seems like most of the videos are from North Carolina, like you mentioned. Is it safe to say that North Carolina got hit the worst with it?
oh, absolutely, by far, yeah, by far. And just to give you some idea, like I'm saying, we got a military base 30 miles down the road that the Pentagon has said is uninhabitable, and this is the good area.
Mm-hmm.
This is the good area. We're we're
Yeah.
we're going to go without power for close to a month here where we live, and this is the good area. The
Yeah.
people in North Carolina up there in those mountains, they haven't even located uh, all of those people yet. Greg Biffle, former NASCAR driver, I think he's former. I don't think he still drives, but I know he was a popular NASCAR driver. He was flying in his helicopter around the area, delivering supplies and emergency essential things, water and first aid and canned goods and stuff like that with his. And he saw a flashing on a mountaintop, and it was a family that had reached a outcropping on the side of one of these mountains and was using a mirror to try and flash that helicopter for emergency help.
Mm.
So these people can't even get out of that area, and just to make this even more morbid and disturbing. And I'm sorry to do that, but it's the truth, and it's what's happening. There's people that have been on the scene up there, and they say this just the stench of death is everywhere. Just that smell, and there's a lot of things that could be that could be animals, that could be livestock, etc. But
Mm-hmm.
there, I think that when we fully get the mountains of North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee, when we fully get those areas cleaned out and looked into, I think this death toll is going to rise significantly.
Yeah.
Right?
Unfortunately, I think you're right.
Yeah, but North Carolina did absolutely get they got the full bore of it. I guess it hit land and got angry, and by the time it got to North Carolina, it was really pissed off.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like you said, if anyone can give anything to help out in any way to those people, I mean, I'm sure they would appreciate it. And
And I don't know the links, or I don't know who's doing what, because we haven't really been able to follow. So I don't we gotta fire up a generator to do anything. So I don't know what the groups are, but I'm sure there's organizations and groups um, that are that are funding it. Yeah, Rachel said there's some groups on Facebook that are doing things like that. So there should be several groups out there. But yeah, any
I know there's also the Red Cross, Salvation Army,
right.
organizations like that. But yeah, everyone will have to got to do their own research. And
And personally, I like to stick with the Red Cross and the Salvation Army because they just seem, I guess I know they're legitimate, or supposedly
right.
legitimate.
Yeah,
But
don't
yeah,
give some random guy on Facebook.
yeah,
Give to an
yeah,
organization.
yeah. But whatever help people can give, I'm sure that it'll be greatly appreciated and desperately needed.
Yep. So it almost feels like we shouldn't be talking about sports, but let's dive into it since you were kind enough to get on the phone here.
Well,
Um,
life does go on, and we got to
life
keep
goes
going.
on. So K-State had a pretty good victory on Saturday against Oklahoma State, so they got it turned around. I know you didn't see much football, if any, since you didn't have power.
No, actually, the only football I got to watch the entire weekend, I texted you. I think it was the Falcons and somebody. I don't know, or maybe the Saints or something. I got to watch like a few minutes of it, but I didn't watch any college football at all. Not one game.
Yeah.
But I know K
So
State won, so good for the Cats.
yeah, and they look good. I mean, it was a game into the into halftime. It's still a game, but yeah, they kind of just slowly pulled away from them, and it went 42-20. Looked pretty good. Running game is good, and Avery Johnson really threw the ball well on Saturday and got the receivers involved, which we hadn't seen that much. But he had a real good game, 5 total touchdowns. So like I said, that offense is coming around and it'll get better and better. And when it really gets rolling, this team's going to be scary good. So,
Yeah, I was reading through some of the texts in our group that we text in, and I was picking up a little bit of the comments about the game in real time as y'all were watching it. And it seems like up to this point that Avery comes out and isn't quite at his best, maybe until after halftime. And
mhm,
it's almost like
that's the whole team.
right, exactly.
But it's him especially, yeah, too.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, he's what you see. He's whatever the other 10 guys do, you're going to see it when it's the man holding the ball. But it does seem like the whole team doesn't necessarily play bad in the first half. Uh, I wouldn't say they're a bad first half team at all, but it just seems like they're maybe kind of a meh first half team. Like, that's not very inspiring. But then they come out after halftime, and it's like, a few minutes into the third quarter, it's like they find this whole other gear, and they
Yeah.
just they start just. I mean, it's like they could beat the hell out of anybody when they get in that gear.
Yep. Yeah, you're exactly right. They start slow way too often, and then it takes them a while to get going. And once they do, it's fun to watch. But so I don't know what they have to do to come out at the beginning of the game and on fire, but it's a recurring theme
Well,
with that team.
Does K State have the ability to come back? I mean, we saw, the BYU thing. I'm not really taking that into account because that just kind of got too big to handle. But I mean, in a 10-point game, if K State's getting beat by 10 or 13 or 17, going into the fourth quarter, does K State have that ability to stop that offense and come back that quickly?
Yeah, I mean, if Avery Johnson is aggressive and passing the ball and running the ball, then yeah, they can come back. And I liked what I saw out of the receivers on Saturday. Three of the starting receivers, I think they each had more than 50 yards. So that's pretty good. There was Avery Johnson's first rushing touchdown. He was scrambling a little bit and he really wanted to pass the ball and he hesitated. And the student section saying, run, run, because he had a huge hole to his right. He finally, decided to go ahead and run. And he ran for the touchdown. So he's a little hesitant still to just take off when he sees a hole. And that's going to come with more experience. He's still trying to get that feel for the game. And it's coming, but it's coming slowly. But once he gets that full feel for the game, it's going to be something special.
Sure. Yeah. You're a kid in high school a year ago, and so I can see why maybe you're a little bit leery about just running out in the open against Big 12, defensive backs and linebackers.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot different of a world right there. And just the speed and the strength, stepping up from high school to college. I'm sure that there's a little bit of uh, maybe not shock, but just getting adjusted to it. And it's different when you're practicing against your own guys. You look at them differently, you see them differently. You're not, in the back of your mind, yeah, we're practicing, but this isn't actually competition. But when it's a game, then it kind of gets a little bit daunting. And I think that in the future, like you were just saying, if they can iron those things out and get that confidence and just get that feel for the game, if he can get that command of the game, then I think that he'll probably be one of the more dangerous quarterbacks in all of college football.
Yeah. He had a touchdown pass to one of the tight ends in the third quarter. And it happened in the end zone that we sit in. And he had the guy wide open and he was looking at him, but he kind of pumped and didn't pass it right away. But then he saw, oh yeah, he's wide open, and then he wound up again and passed it, and it was a touchdown, right? He probably should have passed. His first instinct should have been to pass it because who knows, a fast defensive back could come in close on the play and then the play's not wide open anymore. On this play, it worked because, he just wanted to, was kind of feeling the play. And I don't know, he hesitated at first, but then the play ended up working out in the end. So that's why he's still kind of trying. He's getting the feel of the game, basically, at this level, I think. He wasn't going to come in and kick butt right away, even though, he's got a lot of talent. But
Which
it's,
that's one that's one thing you hear, from all these kids. Whenever you get the chance to hear an interview with them, and you ask them, what's the biggest thing? It's always the speed, man. It's the speed. I mean,
mm-hmm.
it's not even doubled. It's like times five is the difference between, I'm sure, a Big 12 defensive back and there's some top tier athletes out there playing on these high school teams. I'm not talking about those guys. Just in general, the speed of play of a high school game, it doesn't compare to a Big Four, a Power Four uh, football game. It's a totally different speed.
Yeah. And something I noticed when looking at the stats, which I like to do, I looked at the Big 12 conference rushing leaders and average yards per carry. K-State has 3 players in the top 10. DJ Giddens is averaging 7.3 yards a carry on the season. That's on 83 attempts. So he's averaging 121 yards a game, just about. Avery Johnson is averaging 7.3 yards a carry. And Dylan Edwards is averaging 6.9 yards a carry. Now, UCF also has 3 guys in the top 10, but they're not, ranked as high as K-State's players. But I'm not sure I've seen a stat like that. I mean, we're only 5 games into the season, but their rushing game is just top notch. If the passing game catches up to the running game, man, they're gonna be cooking.
I mean,
So I
that's
just
that.
wanted to throw that one out there too. I noticed that yesterday.
Yeah,
So
I don't know that I've ever. I mean, I'm sure maybe it's happened before with some very run heavy teams where they've had some guys with some numbers like that. But I mean, those are definitely impressive numbers to have across 3 people. I mean, that's
yeah,
those would be impressive numbers for one person, for one back.
yeah,
But I mean,
right.
and that's, I think that's kind of one of the themes that you and I have stuck with all this season about this K-State team. And I've always talked about them being undersized, but
Yeah.
so fast, so quick. And I mean, if they and I don't think they've hit their stride yet. Like we just talked about with Avery and the learning curve. I mean, I don't think they're anywhere close to hitting their stride. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this K State team doing everything right that they know to do, doing everything as good as they can do it. I don't see anyone that can stop them. I don't know that anyone can stop them from scoring 6 touchdowns. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when this K State team is owned, they are nearly unstoppable on offense, and it's
Mm-hmm.
quick. They can
Yeah.
do it in just a few seconds.
Yeah. So it'll be an interesting game coming up a week from Saturday against Colorado. K-State's defense still looked decent. They shut down Oklahoma State there in the second half. So, and Colorado's still getting all the hype, and they're undefeated in the conference after 2 games. So, I mean, it's a big game. I still like K-State's chances in the game because I don't think Colorado really has beaten anybody yet. But
I don't.
and they didn't really look good against Nebraska, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I've not had a chance to watch them and really follow them very much. I think that they've won more at this point than we thought they would have.
Oh yeah.
So, despite what the issues in the locker room may or may not be, I mean, they seem to have a pretty good amount of talent. I mean, their quarterback, I mean, Shadur Sanders is an outstanding quarterback. He's going to play on Sunday. You're going to see him on an NFL roster. So there's no doubt that they have some players and some skill. Um, who have they beaten so far? They beat Nebraska. They beat Colorado State
They
by one
lost to
point, didn't they?
Nebraska.
Oh, they lost to Nebraska. Well, they beat.
Yeah.
Did they beat Colorado State? I think by like 1 or 2 points.
Yeah, I'll bring it up here in
Or
a sec.
did Colorado State beat them? That was the game you were talking about where they didn't shake hands, where he wouldn't shake the guy's hand.
Right after the game, Shedeur Sanders wouldn't shake the guy's hand.
Yeah.
So they beat North Dakota State by 5. Remember that game? Really could have gone either way. Lost to Nebraska. Yeah, beat Colorado State pretty good, 28-9. Beat Baylor in overtime, and Baylor's no good. And then beat Central Florida 48-21. Central Florida is probably one of the worst teams in the league. We'll find out, but
That Baylor game was the one that I was thinking that was so close
yeah.
that went to overtime. But yeah, I mean, no, they haven't really been tested. This will definitely be the best team that they've played so far. It's in Boulder, so I imagine K State will probably have a decent representation. I mean, that's not a terribly far drive or commute or trip or whatever to go. So I imagine
No,
K
we'll have some
State.
fans there.
Yeah, there'll be some purple in the stands, but I don't, just based on the little bit that I know about Colorado and what you just told me there, I would pick K State by, I'd say, anywhere from 10 to 17 points. I
Yeah,
would
in case
guess.
great defensive Jacob Parrish, who I'm sure they're going to match it against Travis Hunter, Colorado's real good receivers. So that'll be a fun matchup to watch.
Yeah, it will. That'll be a cool game. I'll have to try and check that one out.
Yeah. So South Carolina had a week off,
Thank
and
God.
this week they get Ole Miss. Is that correct?
That is correct. I picked them to win this game before the season,
That's
and
what I
I
thought.
still
I
think
was wondering that. I couldn't quite remember, but yeah.
I'm still picking them to win this game. Although now I think it's going to be a little bit tougher. I wish they would have beaten Kentucky. People say, well, it doesn't matter. You're not any more pissed off already the next week than any other week. But still, I would have liked to have Ole Miss come in here undefeated. Little tidbit, little history nugget for you. 2009, Ole Miss versus South Carolina in Columbia. That was the birth of Sandstorm. So
Oh, really?
yeah,
Okay.
Ole Miss was ranked pretty high. I think they were in the top 15. I want to say they were like 13, or maybe they were in the top 10. I can't remember, but South Carolina came out and had a very impressive game. They held Ole Miss to 3 points most of the game, and then Ole Miss wound up scoring. The final, I think, was 17-10. But the thing about that game that makes it special and cool to us, Gamecock fans, uh, as it relates to the whole Sandstorm thing, that was the first time Sandstorm was ever played at Williams Rice, and it was Ole Miss had the ball, and it was third down, and we stopped them. No, we stopped them on second down. And so we were going to third down. And so whoever the sound guy was, whatever, that's the first time he played Sandstorm. And everybody
Hmm.
started going nuts. Well, that next play, we stopped them. And then it got to fourth down, and they were at a point where they had to go for it. And so, like a little unwritten rule kind of among DJs, sound guys, whatever, it's like you don't keep playing the same thing over and over again. But this guy was like, screw it. It worked the first time. So he went back to Sandstorm a second time on the next down, and the place just exploded. I mean, the stadium just, I think it was probably one of the loudest times Williams Rice I've ever heard. It was insane. That
Hmm.
clip's out there on YouTube. Just go back and look at it sometime. Just look at South Carolina versus Ole Miss 2009 birth of Sandstorm, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But I thought South Carolina having the off week would be a benefit going into this game against Ole Miss. And I figured that having Kentucky early in the year would help us get footing. Now, I didn't figure that we would go to Kentucky and beat them the way that they beat them. I never would have guessed that. I didn't see that whipping coming. I figured that South Carolina would have a chance to go into Lexington, keep it close, and have a chance to win it in the end. and they either would or wouldn't do it. I figured it to be a close game. And I then figured LSU is probably going to come in here and beat us. So we'll be 2-2. I was giving us a win, over Old Dominion and the win over Akron. The win over Kentucky was kind of a surprise. But I figured we'll have the Akron game, then we'll have an off week. So we can kind of rest some guys during that Akron game. We can have the off week, rest some guys a little bit more. We've played two good SEC teams, and we've got a common opponent now. So I figured we would have enough tape on Ole Miss versus Kentucky to be able to scheme a way to beat them. What I wasn't counting on was I wasn't counting on Kentucky beating Ole Miss. I figured for sure Ole Miss would have blown them out of the water.
Yeah.
And now at this point, you asked me a couple of weeks ago, is the SEC down? I kind of hemmed and hawed and, no, I don't really know. I don't think so. But at this point, I don't know what to think anymore because you just look at the parity that's starting to exist everywhere. South Carolina goes to Kentucky, destroys Kentucky. Kentucky turns around, almost beats what's clearly the best team in college football the last 2 or 3 years, and then turns around after that and beats Ole Miss, undefeated Ole Miss, on their home field. And so you're sitting here and you're like, well, how good is Kentucky? Well,
Right.
South Carolina, by all rights and means, should have beaten LSU. So, I mean, you
Yeah.
could very easily have a 4-0 South Carolina team right now, and we still don't know, are they good? Are they not good? So, it's crazy, this has been a really weird year to me. This has been a really weird year for the SEC in that the typical scheme, the typical plan hasn't been followed. There's been little, odds and ends and curveballs here so far to this first third of the season. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen this weekend. I think South Carolina's going to win.
Do you? Okay.
So yeah, I got South Carolina winning. I think that's going to be a good game, but I
So Ole
think,
Miss is favored by 9.
yeah,
So
give me them. Give
that
me
might be
all.
is that Monty's weekly lock then?
That's it. I'll put a lock on it. I'll put a lock. If I was going to put money on anything right now, I'd put it on South Carolina to win. But that's why Vegas wins all the money and I don't. So there you
Right.
have it.
So there's not many other top 25 versus top 25 games this weekend. The only one is Missouri at Texas A&M, and Texas A&M is favored by 2.5. That's an 11 a.m. game on Saturday, and at Texas A&M. So we're gonna find out how good Missouri is, I think.
Well, I will be pulling for Missouri, and I hope they can go in there anytime. Anytime you can go into Kyle Field and win and beat them in College Station, it's a good day for college football.
Yeah,
So go Mizzou.
yeah, and that's a big game for Missouri. If they win that one, then I think they're legit, and they may. I don't know. They may run the table. I was talking to Michelle, the other day. I said, "Boy, this game Saturday's going to be tough," and she said, "Well, they're not going to win them all." And I said, "Well, they might if they win this one."
Right. Well, yeah, very true. I mean, I'm sitting here, yeah, looking at the SEC, and I don't know what to think. I don't even know what to think of South Carolina because I don't even know, is South Carolina, good, or
Yeah,
I don't know what to think. Like, what if South Carolina beats Ole Miss this weekend? Okay, well then you got a 2-loss Ole Miss team and a 1-loss South Carolina team. So, but it's still, even if that were to happen and that were to wind up being the situation, it would still be hard for me to wrap my mind around South Carolina is better than Ole Miss, even though all
mm-hmm.
the indicators are there. So, Missouri sitting out there. I
And
mean,
Missouri still does have to go to Alabama. So I was just kind of making a point that these games are important, and if Missouri wins, then I think they're legit. That's all I'm saying. I'm not predicting them to run the table, but I think if they beat A&M, they're a legit top 10 team.
I mean, I would say I think that they are definitely a top 15 team. I would put them in the top 15 moving towards 10, but I want to see them play a big boy. I want to see them go into Bryant Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. I want to see them go into Death Valley in Baton Rouge. I want to see them go into Neyland Stadium in Knoxville. I want to see you do those things. Go into Sanford Stadium in Athens, Georgia. Let's see what happens then. Do you play a respectable, close game, or do you get blown out by 28 points? That lets me know who you are. Because if you can go into Georgia, if you can go into a LSU or a Texas even or a Alabama, hell, even as bad as Auburn is, it's still a tough place to play. When you go on the road in the SEC, if you go into one of those big boy stadiums and you at least put on a show, you don't get drubbed out of town, then I know you're legit. I know you're a good program.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to that. That's probably the game I'm looking forward to the most this weekend, and I'm going to catch South Carolina too. So a couple of
I,
intriguing games there. So
I'm definitely going to try and watch, watch as much as I can. So hopefully this weekend will be rest and relaxation.
yeah. So are you aware of Clay Travis?
I know Clay Travis is a country music singer.
That's Randy Travis.
Oh, right. Okay. Clay Travis.
Clay
Oh, is he an
Travis used
actor?
to have a sports talk show on Fox Sports in the mornings, and now he has his own website, outkick.com. They cover college sports, and now he's with Buck Sexton. He and Buck took over for Rush Limbaugh when Rush Limbaugh died, and they have their own radio show in the afternoons.
I got you.
Anyway, he after the games on Saturday listed his prediction for the playoffs. And I'll just run this by you real quick in order. He's got Alabama, Ohio State, Miami as the ACC champ. BYU is the Big 12 champ. Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, Penn State, Oregon, Missouri, Clemson, and UNLV as the one outside power conference team.
UNLV.
Yeah, I don't get that, but I really don't get BYU.
I don't think Clemson's that great.
I don't either. I don't know how he has them rising that much.
I don't. I don't. I mean, I could see some of those teams on there. I don't. I don't. I'd say I'd probably agree with 65, 70% of it of what he's got. I
Mm.
don't know about that UNLV deal. I don't think Clemson um, is that great. I don't think Penn State's going to wind up being that great. Um,
And
Ohio State. Go ahead.
I think the Big 12 champ will still be K State or Utah. I
I
mean,
I I think it's going to be K State. I really think it's going to be K State.
BYU, he's looking at like this is what frustrates me. He's a big SEC homer. This Clay Travis, like way more of a SEC homer than you are.
Oh God.
And I bet he hasn't seen K State or Utah play this year, and he probably looked at a score of BYU beating K State and said, "Oh, BYU's the favorite now."
Right. Exactly.
He watches all the SEC games, but doesn't watch much outside of that. So,
Well, unfortunately, that's the way most SEC people are.
yeah,
Um, but no, I don't. Like I said, I
it's
probably
just kind of a shot in the dark at this point. But I
yeah.
wanted to run that by and get your take on it.
Now the ACC, if Clemson finds a way to get into the championship and win it, I guess I could see them making it that way. I don't see Clemson making it as an at large. I do think Miami's probably actually good enough to win the ACC. So I could put Miami there. Obviously, I could definitely put Georgia there, put Ohio State there. I'm not big on the BYU thing. I'm not big on the Penn State thing. I'm not big on the UNLV thing. I don't, for whatever reason, I just don't have a good feeling about either of those three.
Mm-hmm. On a
And
side
I don't
note,
know, maybe
we
go
were
ahead.
watching Alabama and Georgia the other night, and Alabama got out to a huge lead, and we're just kicking their butts. And Michelle got irritated with me, wanted me to change the channel to another game, and I said, "Well, it's Georgia could come back in this one." And it ended up I was right, but they just didn't come back to win. But it ended up being a game at the end, and Alabama pulled it out. But boy, Alabama came out on fire and just, we talked about if K State ever did that, just came out on fire. But that's what Alabama did. They came out and kicked their butt in the first half.
I want to go back to something we were talking about earlier. Um, I think it was before we started recording. The Big Ten SEC thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say the scenario just plays out this year, where you've got four of each of those teams, or let's just say it gets real ridiculous, and you've got 9 teams that are represented by the Big Ten and the SEC, right?
Before the record, just so everyone knows what we're talking about, the SEC and the Big Ten were supposed to meet today. And what they want to do is when the playoff system comes up for renewal in 2026, they want 4 automatic bids for each conference, the SEC and the Big Ten. So 4 each from the SEC and Big 12. They'd have 4 auto bids for each conference. So,
From the SEC and the Big Ten.
right. So they would take those 2 conferences would
They
automatically
want a total
get
of 8. So
8 of the 12
I guess my
spots.
question is, right. So my question is, what is the avenue of attack or retaliation, etc., that the Big 12 and the ACC and the rest of college football could take? What can they do?
Yeah, good question.
You
Nothing
know,
right. I mean, do they have any power?
right? Like, I mean, what would happen? That's what I'm saying, and like I'm curious about like this deal with the ACC and teams trying to leave. You know, what would happen if Florida State University just said, you know what, screw this entire schedule that you guys have. We're not playing a game on that schedule. We're going to play whoever else we want to. And they just went and just said we're independent and just started. What would happen? They're not. What are they going to do? There's no recourse. There's no, you know what I'm saying? There's no way to go against it. So, I mean, if they wind up doing this ridiculous thing with the Big Ten and the SEC just forcing that into the playoff, I mean, what's the retaliation? What can we do? I mean, what do you do?
If you can't beat them, join them.
I mean,
That's why USC and UCLA went to the Big Ten because they knew this was coming.
right. And you got what, Cal in the or Stanford in the ACC. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why, you know, we were talking about this all before recording, and we've talked about it a little bit before, and I still I think it's going to an NFL type model where, you know, these are the brackets at the start of the season, and at the end of the season, these such and such playoff system, and it's I mean, I think it's basically going to wind up being very similar to the NFL playoffs, and we're not going to have SEC, ACC, Big Ten, or Big 12. Certainly not the way we know them. I think we'll have 4 evenly sized conferences with the same number of teams, and the playoffs will branch out from there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but this is kind of throws a wrench in that a little bit.
Right, I think it does now, but I think this is just a temporary act of greed
Yeah,
that
definitely.
It's
Yeah.
it's the mouse. The mouse is doing this, and you always hear me. I talk about the mouse. Well, the mouse, if the mouse ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. So that mouse sitting down there in Orlando, if he says that he wants 4 Big 10 teams and 4 SEC teams, that's what's going to happen. So
Hmm.
I mean, ESPN and Disney, I mean, they got them by the short and curlies. I mean, what can you do? You can't fight them.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it sucks as for us as K-State fans too, because we used to be one of the best conferences, and now we're like the redheaded stepchild of college football. It almost seems like, you know.
It is, but I think that will improve in the future. I think you'll see a system that's more equitable than what we have right now. Say, for example, at the start of every NFL season, sure, there are favorites. There are teams that people say, well, Buffalo's going to be strong, or Kansas City's, they're bringing everybody back. They're going to be strong, or da 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 da. Regardless of that, at the start of the season, all 32 of those teams have the exact same chance of winning the Super Bowl. There's nothing, no opinion matters. There's nothing there's nothing, the New England Patriots are horrible. There's absolutely nothing stopping the New England Patriots next year, or even maybe this year, from getting on a roll, getting in the playoffs, and winning the Super Bowl, right? But when you talk about college football, there is something stopping teams, say, for example, like a K State, or like maybe even a South Carolina, but probably not because of the SEC thing. But there's so many schools that you could name out there: Illinois, Syracuse, UTEP, whoever, New Mexico State, whoever you want to throw out there. That team winning 9 or 10 or 11 games in a season is not worth as much as Georgia or Southern Cal or Notre Dame that same number of games. You follow me?
Hmm.
So those things aren't equal. That bias is there. That bias exists. A lot of it's recency bias based on what these teams have done. The rich get richer. Alabama gets richer. Georgia gets richer. Ohio State gets richer, et cetera, et cetera. This is why in the NFL we have salary caps, and why worst gets the first. The draft picks, et cetera. And that's why we have trades, and that's why we have all these things in the NFL, because the NFL is entirely equitable across all of its teams. College football is not. It's extremely
No,
biased. It's
no.
extremely biased. And like, you had that K State team that won the Big 12 championship game. Jesus, we've talked about this before. Just last year, look at Florida State. I mean, how much more blatant can it get than the networks, Disney, ESPN, etc. It can't get any more blatant than what happened to Florida State last year, that they absolutely control it and will do whatever they want to with it.
Hmm.
And there has to be a recourse. We have to find a recourse. Well, I don't
I
know
guess
if,
I'm just frustrated because we're not part of the cool kids club now or the big boys club. It doesn't seems
right.
like all those Big Ten and SEC teams kind of look down their noses at us now. And K State should be playing at the very top of college football. I mean,
You're
they sell out the stadium, I don't know, 20 times in a row now. They've got, a Heisman contending talent at quarterback. They've got all this talent on the field, and they may win their conference this year, but they're still looked down upon. It's frustrating. That's all I'm saying.
And I agree with you. I agree with you 1,000%, because here here is the absolute harsh reality, is that Vanderbilt University and Kansas State University both start the year 0-0.
Yeah.
Okay. By the time, let's say, through whatever miracle of God and all of the planets and heavens, let's say Vanderbilt somehow winds up 8-0, and K State is sitting there at 8-0. That Vanderbilt team is going to be ranked higher. just by virtue of that SEC tie. Just
Hmm.
like if Michigan State did it, or if Purdue did it, or if Iowa, did it, they would get that nod before a K State or a Kansas or whatever, because it's just that's the way it's rigged, and it is not fair. It's not. It's absolutely not fair at all. Even though we've gone now to 12 teams, we've got this expanded playoff, etc., and it's going to make it more fair than it has been. It's still not fair. There's still bias out there against the Big 12 and the ACC, and you're absolutely right. And I don't know what to do about it. I don't know what anyone can do about
Yeah, I don't know. We'll just have to see how this plays out. But it's interesting that our prediction, on which we had years ago, is now coming true. But
it.
I
Yep.
told K State fans, I was telling them 5 years ago, they need to reach out to the Big Ten and the SEC and see and do anything they can to get in either of those conferences because I knew what was coming. But no, it was always, we're loyal to the Big 12. The Big 12's going to stick together and blah, blah, blah. And man, K State would be in such a better position now if they would have taken my advice and tried to get, there's no guarantee that the Big Ten or the SEC even wanted them, but K State needed to make that pitch. And that's what I was saying.
Yeah. Um, I don't know, man, but I still kind of disagree with you a little bit on that, just because I I want to forget about conferences. So it's hard for me to see or line up with what you're saying. Not that I ultimately disagree with you. It's just I'm seeing it different than you, because I don't want to jump from, let's say South Carolina was in the ACC like they used to be. Like, I would still watch SEC football, but I don't know that I would necessarily be sitting here wishing that South Carolina were in the SEC or that they were in the Big 12 or any other conference, just because I want those conferences gone. I want Region 1, Region 2, Region 3, Region 4. And
Yeah, but I
it's
think that's what they're putting together with the Big Ten
right,
and
right.
SEC.
And that's what you're talking about. That's what you were saying when you said they want those, the Big Ten and the SEC each want those four automatic playoff berths. They're just bullying everybody is all they're
Mm-hmm.
doing. It's bullying, and at its simplest form, ultimately, it's extortion. I mean, it's like you're gonna play our way or you're not gonna play at all, and
But
it's
it's like
horrible.
Oklahoma and Texas. They knew all this was coming. That's why they left the Big 12. But everyone else in the Big 12 is like, let's keep the league together. We're loyal to the Big 12. Well, now you're getting left out.
Yep, that's where loyalty gets you is nowhere. I mean,
Yeah.
do I have time?
Sometimes. Yeah.
Do I have time to tell you these conferences and loyalty? I'll try and make it quick. All right. Well, South Carolina was in the ACC, and obviously back in those days it was all sports, etc. Well, they started doing really good at basketball and winning the ACC basketball tournament. Ultimately, what happened was North Carolina and Duke started getting pissed off at them, and so it kind of it bled over into football. In that North Carolina and Duke started trying to impose a mandate throughout all of the ACC schools that there be a certain entrance requirement and da 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 da, certain standards that weren't in place that were going to affect South Carolina's recruiting. So
Mm-hmm.
here's what happened: South Carolina went and talked to Clemson. South Carolina and Clemson made an agreement to leave the ACC together. So that way, both schools in the state would be unified. We're in this together.
Yeah.
And you see what wound up happening. As soon as South Carolina
Right.
left the ACC and was out, Clemson turned their back and just, nope, we're staying. And
Yeah.
so that's where that loyalty gets you a lot of times. A lot of times, loyalty gets you screwed. But,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate to see the Big 12 uh, break up like that. And now it's reforming. And, but I'm just ready for these conferences to go away. I want something that is inherently and unarguably fair for everyone involved.
Yep. Well, this is going to be an ongoing discussion, and we'll just have to see how it plays out, man. Uh,
Yep,
Good
exciting
stuff
times
today, man.
indeed.
I'm glad you were able to jump on and stay safe, and let us know if you need anything. And we're thinking about you.
I'm good, man. I'm good. I appreciate it. Just please send those thoughts and prayers to the people in Western North Carolina, and if you're able to help in any way, please consider trying to help them because they are in a bad situation.
Yep, definitely. All right, brother. Well, let's plan on touch base next week and talk to you then.
All right, you gonna watch the game tonight? The Falcons and Buccaneers. Amazon.
Yeah, we'll have it on.
Yeah, I figure the Bucks will probably take care of them. Atlanta's 2-2. I think the Bucks are 3-1. Putting up a lot of
Yeah, the
points.
Buccaneers have started out really well.
They're
So
looking good. This should actually be a pretty good game. Both teams seem pretty good, so it should be a
yeah,
decent game.
yep,
So, all right, brother. Well, we'll talk to you soon.
absolutely. All right, man. Talk to you later.
Have a good one. Bye.
You too. Bye.